This was clearly a racially motivated murder, and to this day it remains unsolved. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Oneal Moore. Viewer discretion is advised. At the time of this case, Oneal Moore was 34 years old and he was a military veteran. He was a father to 4 children, all of them girls. His daughters idolized him. They loved him dearly. Oneal was an active leader in his church, and he was about as friendly as you could possibly get. In 1964 or so, when racial tensions were obviously at an all-time high, Oneal Moore, along with Creed Rogers, they became the very first black deputy sheriffs in Washington Parish, Louisiana. This was in an area that was running rampant with the Klan, and so the decision to hire not just 1 but 2 black men to be officers, well, it just didn't sit well with our little hooded knob jobs. Both Oneal and Creed both knew that they were putting their families at risk for taking this job, but it was important at the same time. Both of them wanted to enforce the law, and they wanted to perform their duties as officers just as if anyone else would. But on June 2nd, 1965, somebody would take their racism out on these 2 men. The 2 men were in their patrol car, and they were actually on their way to one of their family's homes for dinner. According to Creed Rogers, as they were on their way to that house, they saw a small fire off the side of the road. So they pull over. This is a recreation, by the way, from Unsolved Mysteries. They pull over, they take a look at it, and it looks like just a really basic small trash fire, and they decide to just leave it because it's just a trash fire. This may possibly have been a setup to get them to stop. They pull away and they do a U-turn, and as they're heading back now on the road towards one of their homes, they see an old model black pickup truck on the side of the road. They pass it. All of a sudden, that truck begins to tail them. They're able to see that there is a Confederate flag on the front of this truck, but it won't leave them be. It's really getting close to their bumper. Then the truck swerves to the side and it lines up with them when 2 white men stand up in the bed of the truck and they point guns at the 2 officers. And suddenly, gunshots ring out. Oneal Moore takes a bullet to his head and he is killed instantly. He was driving the car and they crashed into a tree. His partner, Creed Rogers, was also shot twice, once in the shoulder and I think once near his eye, which would make him permanently blind in that eye. A local man heard the commotion. The black pickup truck just completely took off after this, but this local man came to help the 2 men who were shot and waited till police got there. This local man plus Creed Rogers were able to identify the truck to police, to the other sheriff's deputies, and so they immediately began to search for this vehicle. And about 30 minutes later, roughly 20 miles or so away, a sheriff's deputy finds that pickup truck and pulls them over. And it's pretty much an exact match as to what the 2 people describe the truck looking as. They arrest the man inside the pickup truck. His name is Ernest Ray McKelveen. Quickly, though, he would post a $25,000 bond and he was released. Ernest Ray McKelveen was a very well-known white supremacist in that area. He belonged to one of the local chapters of the Triple K, let's call them. And so suspicion fell on that group of pieces of garbage, but they denied having any responsibility in the shooting. Of course they did. But the charges against him were all dropped soon after he was released on bond, claiming there was no evidence to tie him to the murder and attempted murder. This was clearly a pressure thing, that this happened because they were pissed off that 2 black men were hired as police officers, thinking that if you killed one of them or both of them, they'll think twice about hiring another black officer. Well, they couldn't be more wrong. And so the sheriff's department said, yeah, go F yourselves. And they replaced Oneal Moore with another black officer. So if Oneal Moore was killed for that reason, then they failed to do what their goal likely was. I do have to kind of admire that. I mean, they didn't back down. They stuck to their guns and said, we're not going to let you pressure us into doing your white supremacist things. We don't cave into white supremacy here. The FBI at one point has become involved in this case. However, they never apparently were able to get any evidence to suggest exactly who did this. I mean, it does sound like this Ernest person was at least one of the perpetrators, but he may have been the driver, and there was at least 2 shooters in the back of the truck. And also, quite possibly, there was a 4th individual in the passenger seat. And this guy has since died. Hopefully it was painful. In 2016, the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice said, "It's time that we close this case due to the passage of time. All of the suspects, and essentially now all of the witnesses, are dead. And so justice will never come for Oneal Moore. He was shot and killed because he was black. He was shot and killed because a bunch of fragile white men didn't like that. And like a lot of cases similar to this back in that time, the victim never got justice. Oneal Moore will never get justice. And quite honestly, that's just disgusting."